In part one, Debbie opened her heart and shared the journey of loss that became the foundation of Anchor Point. Now, in part two, we're shifting from survival to legacy building. We're talking about how adversity can be the very soil where purpose takes root. Welcome back to It's Your Story to Tell. I am your host, Megan Babcock. Alongside her nonprofit work, Debbie also leads the Debbie Simmons LLC, where she coaches entrepreneurs, leaders, and ministry founders to build businesses and legacies that align with their God-given calling. Thank you for coming back and continuing this conversation with me. And I'd love for you to share about how your continued journey eventually evolved to the work that you're doing as a legacy coach.
Mhm. Okay, so here's, as I started Anchor Point and we built it and it's made this a major impact and is continuing to do that, I still get to be CEO, which is great. But one of the things that we talked about is how can we begin to expand outside of just our Anchor Point circles, because we know that my story is powerful. And so God, about 18 months ago, said, I need you to get the book out and finish it. And I had written it about 8 years ago. And I was like, no, not really. And I'm like, you want me to tell this story to the world? That's like, really? That's like pushing it. And what I think what we don't understand about our stories and our legacies is that, we're used to our stories. I've lived with myself my whole life, right? And so it's no surprise what's happened to me, right? But to somebody else, it's like, oh my gosh, how did you overcome that? Or how did you do that? And it gives people hope when we share our stories. And so God was like, it's time to write the book, The Heart of Legacy, and it's time to give it to the world. And so I'm going to move you. You're still going to be CEO, but we raise up the staff to run the day-to-day operations so that you can speak and you can coach and you can influence others and bring people along. And so this has been the transition that we've been working on the last year, is to put me in a space to impact more people. And that will ultimately help Anchor Point. It will ultimately spread the word and more people will know and hopefully be encouraged to be legacy makers. So that has been the transition that we've been on the last year. And, I can tell you, it gets into like things like imposter syndrome and is it really worth telling? And God has been so gentle and so faithful to go, okay, you need to do it, push. But it's like people will say just the kindest things. And I'm like, really? And
Mm.
I'm like, okay, I need to tell this story more because it is a reflection of God's glory and all of that, that I am where I am, and it lets people see him. And so I don't want to hold on to that. I want to share that. And if it gives one person the ability to get unstuck for good, then it has been worth the journey. So that's how he's kind of transitioned and raised up or expanded what I'm doing right now. It feels like I'm doing a lot right now. So he's expanded all of that, but it's all been so good. And he's been so gracious to kind of teach me and walk me through that process.
I remember when he told me that I was going to tell my story.
Mhm.
And I was like, that is not what I signed up for. I wanted to make space for other people's stories and just be there to walk alongside of them. And he's like, well, how do you think they're going to trust you? What if your breakthrough wasn't found in striving, but in walking? What if clarity, healing, and direction came not in the hustle, but in quiet, intentional steps led by the Spirit? Sacred Pathways is a monthly walking mentorship designed to align your body, soul, and spirit with the wisdom of God. Each month, you'll receive 12 walking lessons. These are short teachings designed to be experienced on the move. You'll also get one live group session and access to a community of women committed to walking in purpose. This is more than a routine. It's a rhythm of renewal, a sacred invitation to process life with God, one step at a time. If you're hungry for deeper intimacy with the Lord, clarity in your calling, and healing that moves through your whole being, this is your path. Join Sacred Pathways and start walking in wisdom today. Now enrolling on itsyourstorytotell.com. You can't ask people to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. And it allowed me to really confront my own perfectionism, my people pleasing, all of the masks that I was wearing. It was taking me to a new level. He showed me the destination is the journey, because I was always like, get to the destination, didn't really take time for the scenery, the celebration, the enjoyment of it. I was just checking everything off my list to achieve and get people to tell me how good I was doing. So telling my story of failed marriages to, being in domestic violence marriage, no one knew any of that, because on the outside, I really tried to make it look so beautiful and curated. And so that was a hard but freeing step, because the enemy was keeping me in shame by saying, what are people going to think about you? No one wants to hear your story anyways. Who cares? There's people with more trauma than you. You don't have it very bad. You're making a big deal about this. And God just kept showing me to step forward. And I remember I was writing out my story for my first episode. And on the day before, God said, I want you to tear up everything you've written, which I was like, that's my security. Having it so perfectly, the words that I'm going to say. And he said, I just want you to answer the questions that are asked of you with the first thing that I bring to your mind. I was like, wow, that's letting go of a lot of control, but it turned out amazing. My next podcast was with my son. At the time, he was 21. He's 23 and engaged and running his own business. But we talked about how me not dealing with my things from the past impacted him and my children, and how as I began to heal, that it gave them new tools. It gave them something new. And it is that ripple effect. Doing our own work leads to the testimony. And I think for me before, I just wanted to help people and pretend like I had the testimony, but I wasn't really living the way God really designed me and the plans that he had for me. And so I wasn't very effective. I love that God was showing you the impact that sharing your story, and that it does bring so much hope. He says in the scripture, it's by the power of his blood and the word of our testimony. It's together that we get to co-labor for bringing others to be able to find that redeeming love and seeing their stories transformed. It's so exciting and encouraging.
Yeah, and you're right when you talk about like Satan's biggest deal is not to like totally take you out. It's just to get you on the sidelines. And and you can still go to church and you can do those things, but it is in revealing the deepest parts of me in safe environments where I can really begin to heal, and then he can begin to use it too. And that is impactful, because that's like, oh my gosh, this is God working in your life, and people see that and they are watching that. And it's so powerful. And like your son, what you said about your son is so true. When we work with kids in camp that have trauma backgrounds, the biggest work is always with the parents. And I'm like, you cannot take this child through their trauma journey unless you've dealt with your own stuff. And so, I always tell people, I'm like, God gave me 9 children because I got a lot of things to deal with than me. And so I've just had to do a lot of work. And so, and it's all good. But I mean, the truth is unless we go first, we cannot take other people. And so that is the power of the journey, like you said.
Yeah. When I learned how my wounds, even when I thought I was hiding things, and you think your kids don't see this and that, you can't, because it impacts everything you do, how you show up, how your nervous system is even experienced, the anxiety you put out into the room. You don't even have to say words to
Yeah.
create
Mhm.
insecurity in your own kids. I love that you are supporting the parents to be able
Mhm.
to be more effective in helping their children. My youngest, we've been through a really hard but amazing journey over the last 2.5 years, and it has transformed me so much by learning that there are things in me that contributed to things in her, that the way we communicate, every kid needs it different, and learning how to adjust. But it has given me so much more understanding of other perspectives,
Mhm.
gained skills that now allow me, even in my work, to be more effective. And then you talked about being stuck. I wrote a book last July that released, and it was called Unstuck,
Yeah, that's
all
good.
about walking through those hard places, because you cannot get unstuck if you're not willing to go back, to look at it, to allow God to meet you in that hard and bring healing so that you can then leave a legacy from a place of healing. We've got people listening who are grieving or stuck or, just feeling desperate, maybe. And I would love for you to share, what is one practical step that someone could take today to move towards purpose?
So I will give it to you, but I'm going to give it to you in an acronym, which has a little bit more than one step, but it is really, what is the next best step? And when we talk about best, I break it down like this. It's so important for us to breathe. Okay. Deep breaths, because that gets us out of our amygdala, where we're making choices out of feelings and everything, and it gets us into our prefrontal cortex, where we can make good logical decisions. Okay, so deep breathing, that's number one. Number two is, it's evaluate, dump all the stuff out of your head onto paper.
Mm.
Okay, just, I call it vomiting on paper. It doesn't have to have grammar, it doesn't have to have spelling, it just put it down and get everything out of your head. Then the S is step back. Go do something else. Go take a walk, drink a cup of coffee, hang out with friends, watch a TV show. I don't care what it is. Just take your mind off of what you just dumped on the paper. And then after you do that for a little while, come back and you're going to figure out how to take the next best step. So now you're going to be able to look at your paper and you're going to be able to go, that's feelings, and this is the issue, and this is maybe a fact around it, but I can come back and I can look at it because I dumped it all out of my brain. I had a friend who the other day was flipping out, and when I was talking to them, I was like, okay, fine, let's write them all down. And we started, and I was like, surely there's going to be a list, like 10 or 15 things on this list based on how freaking out this person was. And they dumped all the stuff out. And I was like, is there anything else? Is there anything else? And you know what? It was two things, but it was taking up so much space that they couldn't do anything else. And it was emotionally taxing and all these things and everything. And so when we talked about take the next step, then you look at it and you go, okay, what can I do? Because now this person had just two things. And I'm like, what can we do? What's something you feel good about as a step forward? Because our goal is take the step forward, then figure out what the next one is. And it doesn't have to be giant ones. When I was struggling after losing the boys, my next best step some days was pulling the covers off of my head, getting up, brushing my teeth, and walking around for 5 minutes, and then getting back in the bed. And that was my step at that point. But it eventually, a bunch of positive steps lead to healing, lead to a journey in a long direction of positive, even if you go backwards a little bit. So I always like to say, find that next best step, because we've got to keep moving, even if there's fog, even if there's distractions. Just what is the thing that you can do? And, I know, we talked about my book, The Heart of Legacy. I give it as a gift to all your listeners. And that's, if you can't figure anything out, get that book for free and just read it. It'll give you lots of ideas in it, but just what can be your next best step. And you are not beyond hope. Even if you feel like you are, you're not. the sun will come out tomorrow and we will figure our way.
That's so good. I love acronyms because that definitely helps me to be able to think through things. I have trained a lot and use it in my own life and with my daughter and even with clients in dialectical behavior skills. And there's a lot of acronyms in that to help you remember. And it's all about being able to process and remain regulated in this dysregulated space. And I think that's so powerful when you can just get it out on paper so that you're not holding it all inside because it's in your mind, your body's tense, everything. And then to walk away from it is such wisdom because you'll gain perspective through that stepping back. And when you sit back down, there will be solutions or things that stand out that you're like, I could do one thing here, right? What a cool way to support yourself in taking that next best step. So I will put the links to find Debbie and her nonprofit and get her book in the show notes. And Debbie, I just appreciate you for coming and sharing your story and wisdom. And I'm just excited to see what God's going to do in the next 15 years through all of the things that you are doing to make a difference in this world.
Thank you.
Listeners, Debbie's story is such a powerful reminder that our hardest seasons, they don't have to define us. They can actually refine us. And if you're ready to begin building a legacy of your own, I encourage you to connect with Debbie, check out our book, and would you share this episode with someone who needs the hope we've talked about today? And subscribe so you don't miss more conversations that remind you your story matters, your healing matters, and your legacy is your gift to the world. Thank you, Debbie, for being here.
My pleasure.